And we are live here at Star Wars News Net, talking all things Rise of Skywalker. Tonight we continue on. We are pushing on, my guys, with the movie breakdowns, movie debate. Let's just say, first of all, 2 weeks ago about broke me. I mean, it about broke me. We were talking Last Jedi. It was me, Miguel, Paul.
I was hanging out
And
in the chat. I was kind of
listen,
lurking.
It was. People don't know about this. We should have just kept recording because Paul, Miguel, and I spoke for another hour and a half after the show.
Seriously,
it was 2 a.m. and we were talking about Star Wars still.
So Miguel pulled an all-nighter.
He pulled an all-nighter
because he lives in Spain.
Yes.
I'm almost positive. So the man pulled an all-nighter, Miguel.
Yes. It was like 2 or 2:30 in the morning, and we were like, "Yeah, I guess we should call it a day." So that was just The Last Jedi, which is its whole home divisive thing, and it was fun. We had a good time. This week, we're taking another turn, another direction, and we are talking about the Rise of Skywalker. And Paul cannot join us tonight. Paul is sick. Paul, please get better. And I know that he is fuming right now at the
wouldn't want to fight me neither. Yeah,
at the Mortis gods for giving him this illness this evening. Perhaps it was the Last Jedi gods are punishing him for some things that he said last week. But that's neither here nor there. Brian is back.
Up?
Welcome back, Brian. He has been sick and out of it for a while. But Brian, how you feeling tonight? You ready to rock and roll?
I'm higher than a kite on cold medicine, and I'm ready to trash the living crap out of this movie.
So that's one way to get us started this evening. I'm going to try my darndest to defend in Paul's honor. I will not be able to do that in many instances, but hopefully where I fall short, my friend Nate, who was back 2 weeks in a row, we talked about books, comics, and everything in between last week. But Nate, we're back to talk movies this week. How are you feeling, sir?
I'm feeling good. I wasn't prepared to be on tonight because, Paul's been the guy who's been championing this movie the entire length of this show's runtime. Unfortunately, it's not meant to be tonight, so you guys are stuck with me as a replacement for him. And like Tyler said, I don't know if I could be super positive about the movie. I enjoy quite a bit. I will have some hot takes on this movie that I will defend my absolute damnedest, but I'm sorry, this is a hard movie to defend at certain points. So now that we're positive, let's get right into it.
Let's get into it. And the best way, we've had this format that we did the last two, where we talked about, where some moments leading up that we really loved, all of those things. But I think for this particular movie, we're gonna break it all down. We're gonna push all of that aside. And I do have some great theater moments, some great buildup. We can talk about that later. Let's get right into it. Opening statements. Just opening arguments on the movie, opening remarks. Brian,
don't start. Let Nate.
You don't want to
first.
start. Okay,
yeah,
Nate.
Opening remarks.
Nate, you have the floor. Give me your 90-second spiel on TROS.
Ooh. Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker is, oh boy, I did not prepare anything because, but for me, this is a movie that has a lot of interesting ideas, executed not the best, to say the least, but those ideas for me, as we come up on 4 years now since this movie has come up, just thinking about this movie and what it tried to do, much like the prequels, for me, I find myself appreciating certain elements more and more as I sit with them. I haven't watched this movie since 2020, so I can't say so I don't really have. I don't know. This is a very complicated movie for me.
sorry.
I haven't
love
watched
this
it in
movie.
3 years.
I haven't
love
watched it in
this
3
movie.
years. I was
I
not
have
prepared to
not
be on
visited
this show
this
tonight. I
very
didn't know I was not. I didn't have time to watch this movie before coming on tonight. I'm sorry. Have you guys watched this movie recently?
I try to watch every saga film every year, like just one time, throughout the year. Like I try to, and then occasionally like some background, movies. I'll put something on every once in a while. So yes, I guess recently, like I have not watched it in the last several months, but I've watched it probably in like January. I think January, February. Usually try to rein in the new year with try to get all the movies in like the first few months kind of thing. Brian, you have the floor, sir.
I have 3 words for you.
Oh,
Somehow Palpatine returned.
It's not that bad of a line.
I have 3 more words for
I will
you.
defend
What
that
the
fucking
hell?
line later on.
This movie is such a steaming pile of garbage that I just wow. It's other than 2008 when the Clone Wars movie came out. This is the only other time I've ever sat through a Star Wars movie in the theater and wanted to get up and walk out of it in the middle. This
Brian's face right now,
dude. This movie is such crap. And there's some things they could have done to save this thing, but it was just I don't know. Like if you'd have taken like the whole first 5 minutes of this movie and put it at the end of The Last Jedi, maybe you could have salvaged the trilogy a little bit so it actually felt like there was like a cohesiveness to all 3 movies. But this movie, like, it's all damage control. It's the first half of it is all damage control because some whiny fanboys got online and complained about The Last Jedi. That's the entire reason the whole first half of this movie is just look.
oh boy,
the
head scratcher and we
sucks.
look away from the camera and we are not at the 8-minute mark. This is gonna be good.
The final battle in this movie was not nearly as epic, as emotional, as high. It didn't even feel like it. They tried their best to make it feel high stakes, but they just didn't do it. It was nothing compared to the final battle from Return of the Jedi. The final battle in Return of the Jedi felt like the official ending to this war. It felt like this is what they were fighting for. The Emperor's dead, Vader's dead. This is it. This is what they all fought for. And then you just have this tiny little party on this jungle planet. Like it didn't seem like that was the ending of the whole battle. That was the end of Palpatine. No, it seemed like such a poor attempt at copying, pasting what had already come before. And it was such, I want to say it was a safe movie, but it wasn't because it sucked. I feel like this movie, and this will be the last thing I say about it for now, because I've got a list of like 87 sins that we're going to go through here in a minute about this freaking movie. But I feel like, they started strong with The Force Awakens. That was a safe movie. Basically let everybody know, hey, Star Wars is back. We're going to play this one safe. Then we're going to get into some weird stuff. And then they got into some weird stuff with The Last Jedi. And I think everybody was so upset with that they were like, oh, you know what? Just bring JJ back, get a movie out, wash our hands of it. It doesn't even have to be good, JJ. Just put out a Star Wars movie to wrap everything up, put a freaking like crap colored bow on it, and just get the trilogy done, wash our hands of it. We won't make a movie for another 8 years. We'll just focus on The Mandalorian for a little while, and then we'll try to get back into the film thing. I think that's what happened.
So before I begin, I just want to say that I don't entirely disagree with a lot of what you said there, but we are going to disagree on quite a bit, and this is going to be us at the end of the show.
Yeah, I really want to push back on some things Brian said.
So let me give just my 2 cents before we really get cranking. I am a Last Jedi defender to the end of time, and so this movie, in a lot of respects, did feel like a bit of a slap in the face to a lot of what I loved about The Last Jedi, which was Rey being completely unrelated bloodline-wise to the main, familial figures in the movie. Palpatine, in hindsight, Palpatine coming back, like why it would have been, I think, a more appealing to have a bigger swing on, how we're going to conclude the trilogy rather than just retread Palpatine. And Palpatine, I love Palpatine. I love Ian McDiarmid. He's awesome. He's like on my like top 3 list of people I want to meet at some point before they pass on. And so there are several things that I do not like in this movie. The usage of Adam Driver was, I thought, just absolutely just inconceivable to me that you could have some talent like him and not really give him much to work with. However, and this is for Paul now, and I do believe most of what I'm saying. I'm not just going to try to channel my inner Paul in order to bring home point, but I do agree with some of his points. I absolutely adore Ben coming back and being redeemed, and the scenes with him and Harrison Ford are spectacular. I think the last like 45 minutes of this movie are some of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. The fleet coming in at the end was, I think, the spirit of Star Wars coming in the finale, which was the people rising up, not some sort of alliance, not some sort of army, some other coalition to take out the evil empire. It was the essence, I think, of what even George was saying of like the people, are not going to stand for this. We're all going to come together. And in this, and it did end with Rey becoming what I felt like she was at the end of episode 8, which was the last Jedi. All the Jedi are kind of existing through her. She's carrying the torch completely. And I felt like that was validated with her being able to commune with them and then being able to come in towards the end. So again, to me, the best way I describe it to my friends is this movie is like a beautiful, wonderful chocolate cake that just did not get that much time in the oven, and it's just still really gooey in the middle. But occasionally you have those bites that taste really good and you really appreciate it, but then you go in for the next one and it's like, is this the same thing that like I'm eating? Like this can't possibly be the same thing. So it has its merits. I really appreciate this film. It makes me feel a certain type of way that no other Star Wars film does, in a positive way, not in a negative way, due to how I love the way it does end and just the journey in getting there. Where I remember every time I saw it, I think it's where I saw the movie, how I saw it, who I saw it with, which helps. Like it was an event, and I think that helps any movie experience for me. So let's get into this a little bit more. Let's start, and we'll throw it back to Brian here. What, if you had to sum up in just your number one thing, like what really took you out of the Rise of Skywalker? I think if you kind of sum up like the thing that took you out of it the most, I have a feeling Nate will be able to articulate why that maybe didn't feel the same way for him.
It just felt cheap. It felt like just a cheap ending to something that I thought Lucasfilm had done a pretty decent job building up so far. It just, are you talking about like, is there one aspect of the movie or just in general?
That's really an aspect. What was like for me? So I think a lot of people, when I asked them, what about the Rise of Skywalker did you hate, or like when did it lose you? For some people, it's like when Kylo was like, you're a Palpatine. For some people, it's when they just say they fly now. Who knows? Like whatever. Whatever it is for you, and it doesn't have to be a specific thing. It can just be,
right.
Like you're kind of saying, like the aesthetic of the thing.
It just felt so cheaply put together, and it just, maybe I'm nuts, but it just felt so small scale, small stakes, low stake. It just, that to me, I never felt the threat of the Final Order fleet. I didn't feel the threat of it. I don't know. It took us, a Death Star to blow up a single planet in the classic trilogy. Now we just have a gun that's half the size of a Star Destroyer that can wipe out a whole planet. Like it just felt lazy. Honestly, that's the word. It felt lazy to me.
What do you think, Nate?
I don't know. For me, I don't know. As a defender, as an overall defender of this movie, there's not really an element that pulled me out of it. I will agree with Brian in that some elements of it were just very, and going back to Tyler, your analogy, it felt very undercooked in a lot of ways. The production of this movie was complicated with the whole Carrie Fisher situation, among other things, and switching of directors and all that stuff. But that's never an excuse at the end of the day. That's not an excuse, but it is a factor you have to consider as to why the script didn't get that extra punch that we praise things like Andor for and all these other great films and TV shows. So you can't really blame the production issues on certain things not being developed. I don't know. One thing that for me, it's not a problem, and I'll get into why in a second here, but the online community, right away, to answer your question, for the online community, I think right away, one of the things that pulled out most people was Palpatine, and that somehow Palpatine returned. For me, this is one of my hot takes, so I want to defend that line for a second. It's not bad writing, it's bad storytelling. Mm-hmm. What the hell else is Poe Dameron supposed to say in that moment? He doesn't understand the Force. He doesn't understand any of that stuff. And none of the people there do. Rey's not with him. I can't remember if Rey's in that meeting or whatever. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it is bad storytelling in that the movie did not explain good enough why he's back. That was the very first thing that you see in the crawl. The dead speak, Palpatine's back, all this stuff. And the movie doesn't adequately explain why. At the end of the day, it's a dumb turn your brain off sci-fi at fantasy. You just got to roll with some of these things. And for a lot of people, immediately, if you can roll with that, you're in the movie. I was able to roll with it because of everything we know from Palpatine about his character from Revenge of the Sith and Legends, how he also did pretty much the exact same thing and all this stuff and cloning himself and all these things. So I bought it, but I do agree that particular moment soured a lot of fans from the off, and it couldn't really recover from that for a lot of fans. Thankfully for me, I was able to get on board with it, but yeah, it's like, for me, it's the Palpatine thing that kind of is the divide of this film.
I was on board. So I remember watching the live stream for Star Wars Celebration when they delivered the teaser trailer and Palpatine's laugh came on at the end, and then he came out there and did his whole
I was in Chicago
it's crazy.
And I was in a panel and
people went nuts.
We were in a stream and we were in one of the streaming rooms and we were away from the main stage and whatnot. And after the trailer, the panel was over, but we in our room, we were like, encore. So we watched it again, and we just had just a hell of a raucous time, and it was awesome. So I think people wanted Palpatine back, but the movie just did not satisfy what Palpatine represents. I think for the most part, people wanted that type of presence that Snoke wasn't for the most part. I do think Snoke could have been an awesome Episode 9 villain, but of course The Last Jedi happened, and they had damage control, as Brian said. I still don't hate the decision to kill Snoke, and I think they could have used Palpatine a lot better. They tried, but they didn't succeed.
So Brian, I want to ask you this. So with the Sith fleet, let me pull up a picture of the Sith fleet again, because with the Final Order fleet, I was in awe of the Final Order fleet when I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, like if you're going to sell me on some sort of grand plan, like putting something like this out there, and they all have this, planet killing tech that's, able to, what's the easiest thing they could do? Oh, a planet killer. We've had that over and over. But I think where they failed, and part of this is because of future storytelling, probably they didn't want to crush people. When they blew up Kijimi, I don't think people really cared about blowing up Kijimi because we spent 30 minutes there and
not even,
there wasn't, none of our characters really had the tie that was super strong. Like Poe has his ties as a spice runner, but that really wasn't developed enough for us to feel something, versus if when when Leia's planet is destroyed in A New Hope, that's a character we grow on with, and we know that she has a lot of people that she loves there, and she's one of the people we're going to see develop over time.
Mm-hmm.
If they have blown up a different planet, something that either our characters had tied to or something that we as the audience had tied to, like if Palpatine sent his Star Destroyer to Coruscant and just blew up Coruscant, would that have made you feel differently? Like, oh my gosh, like Palpatine's serious, like he's in this for everything. He blows up the biggest prequel planet that we have.
The nerd answer is he wouldn't have. The nerd answer is he wouldn't have because of the dark side stuff going on in Coruscant. So that's the nerd answer.
Right.
But something along those lines.
I'm just saying, right. I'm just asking
Naboo or something.
Is it the tech itself, or is it that
blow up his home on Naboo?
Honestly, that's something he would do.
He would.
That'd be the way to do it.
But when they came up with these planets, it's like if they blow up Jakku, who cares? Because Rey doesn't have anyone there. If they blow up, Finn doesn't.
I got really attached to Jakku in The Force Awakens. I would care about that.
Yes.
The galaxy wouldn't give it two shits, but because it's just Jakku. But
right. So I was just wondering. Yeah,
I think it's the tech, because think about when Palpatine first took over the galaxy at the end of episode, they were already working on a planet killer. They already had the plans for it. They'd been working on it already for a couple of years. That was his plan, was from the get-go planet killer. And then in A New Hope, we see him use the planet killer. Or even in Rogue One, we see him use it on Scarif and Jedha, granted lower power, but whatever. In A New Hope, you actually see it full power, planet gets destroyed. That's very sad. And then in The Force Awakens, we see an entire star system get wiped out by Starkiller Base.
Right.
Star system that at the time we didn't know jack about. I mean, now that some novels have come out, we've kind of expanded on Hosnian Prime a little bit. But at the time, we're like, okay, cool. Yeah, he wiped out 5 planets.
They should have wiped out Coruscant in that movie.
Right. And then 2 movies later to have the threat again of a planet killer over and over. Like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, hoping for a different result. And Palpatine lost over and over and over. And so I don't know why he just thought that, instead of one big gun, I'm going to do a big gun that takes out a whole system. And then he's like, instead of that, I'm going to do 1,000,000 big guns. Like I mean,
it's classic bad guy trope.
Yeah. And that's the problem. It's classic bad guy. Palpatine is not a classic bad guy. He's not.
What does he have left at this point?
Basically, they turned him into Wile E. Coyote is what they basically did. I mean,
but what does he have left at this point? Because the galaxy knows Palpatine's true colors. They know who he is. He can no longer hide behind the facade that he was behind in the prequels, where he was just this politician. Just his very name and the name of Palpatine is going to cause all these red flags to go up, all of this problems. So he can't exactly come in and be like, what other way does he have to try to control the galaxy through absolute fear and control?
Yeah, but he had absolute fear and control once before.
It didn't work, so why not just go bigger and badder? I mean,
but he didn't. He did the same exact thing again. he blew up one planet.
I'm not I don't like it as much as you do, but I'm just trying to see it from the perspective of Palpatine. I don't know. I'm trying to defend the choice. And it goes back to a problem I've had with the sequel era in general. And you brought it up in the novels. This era was so undercooked.
Yeah.
And
a lot of holes in it. Yeah.
A lot of holes. And I love the ideas. It's a lot like the prequel era as well, in that there's a lot of holes in the prequels that were filled in by the Clone Wars and other stuff as well. So George's stuff is not blameless in that. It's not just Disney that failed to fill in all the gaps. So I don't know, just the sequel trilogy really suffered because of not expanding on the galaxy and figuring out, all right, what's going on in the galaxy. So, and if they did
which I felt like The Last Jedi was setting that up for the Rise of Skywalker, and it just decided to dismiss that.
But
so let's get into, and this is probably, go ahead, Brian.
Palpatine's plan didn't make any sense in that movie. Like, you're talking about the guy that was the master of the long game, right? Like, he did this intricate plan to take over the galaxy from the prequel, even before the prequels, all the way through Return. I mean, he was just this master puppeteer. And then he comes up with this like half-cooked great value brand plan in Rise of Skywalker of, why did he tell everybody that he was back 16 hours before launching the final order when he could have just launched the final order and got the drop on everybody? Like, he was just like, here I am, come get me. That makes no sense. Like,
I
he's
think
telling
part of it is he
Kylo at the
couldn't.
beginning, kill the girl, kill her. And then later he's like, no, I need you. So I
think he did that to entice people like Rey and Kylo into his midst, because that was a big part of his plan, was to bring back the Sith. So that was a big part. So, and he can't do that if he doesn't announce he's back. So he has to do that.
So let's talk about our lead of the movie, Daisy Ridley as Rey Skywalker. So let's get into that a little bit. We start off with Rey. Her first moments in this is right after the light speed skipping, and I thought it was an interesting move in the movie to go straight in with Kylo at the beginning, which was a really cool scene with him, Palpatine, and then they go into Finn, Poe flying in, and we don't get Rey for, I think it's like 25-ish minutes into the movie before we see her, and she's levitating, trying to commune with the Jedi. And we get this training sequence, which felt straight out of we have to make the angry online people happy by showing that she's training in some random way. But before we get into this, let's talk about the Rey and Leia relationship, because I think everything in Rey's character for the rest of this movie is dependent on us, hitting on that. And I thought it was a brilliant way to use the limited scope that they had for Carrie Fisher, was to present her as this former Jedi, someone who has had training in the Force, which they showed in Episode 8 with her ability to use the Force. And now they're kind of further cementing that with her as Rey's master after Luke had started her training. So what are your thoughts in general just on the relationship that the two had? I thought they did a great job developing that the best they could, given, the circumstances. And do you think that it holds up for the film? Because a lot of the emotional beats of this movie are centered around Leia and both her relationship with Rey and with Ben. And whoever wants to take that can just go.
I'll start here. And Batu Sai has been a mainstay in this chat here tonight, and I want to bring back up his Leia comment. And because the Leia comment a little bit above. She was, which is why Leia worked for me. She was key in the movie and in the mythology. Leia, going back to what I said a little bit ago, they were really hamstrung with what they could do with Leia in this movie, and it's not their fault. And I really do think I don't think they nailed it, but they did a damn good job at making you feel for Leia and in those key moments, and making her legacy so important for everybody. Ben, Rey, Poe, everything. And it tied up some loose ends in regards to the Leia and Poe relationship from Last Jedi that may not have worked for some people. So it made that more relevant. So Leia in this movie for me, she really did the job. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, but I mean, you can't really fault Lucasfilm for giving it their all, and they gave their all. I don't know. The one element to it was exactly how she died in the movie. That didn't quite hit for me, but I think there's other elements in there because of Carrie Fisher's passing and all that. I don't know. It's complicated, but going back to the original question, on the relationship between Leia and Rey, I think really sold the end for me as well in the whole Rey Skywalker thing, which we'll get to, I'm sure, at the very end of this. But yeah, I bought it. I bought that relationship hook, line, and sinker, and that money shot in the trailer of them hugging really won me over with that. And Leia is just this motherly figure, and we didn't really see it in the other movies, for me at least, to the extent that I wanted to, but we really got it in this movie. And it was, it was basically a movie where our heroes are trying to do this for Leia, and it's really kind of cool. So yeah, it worked for me.
Every single character in this movie's whole emotional kind of path, it does kind of go through Leia.
It all goes through Leia.
Finn and Poe being generals, to
Yeah.
Lando coming back, to Luke talking about Leia's training, to Rey being with Leia, and ultimately Ben coming back. So Brian, what do you think about how we use Leia, but also just mostly the Rey relationship as her apprentice, essentially?
I'll sit here and talk crap about this movie all freaking night long, but this is one of the things that I'm not going to touch as something that made the movie bad, because
you just can't do it.
You can't. No,
do it.
It's like Nate said, it was nobody's fault. It was, they did the best they could with what they had.
And what they did was really good.
Yeah, and it was. It wasn't going to be perfect. There was no win scenario in that situation. There was an absolute 0% chance of pulling that off to keep everybody happy. So that's one thing I'm not going to touch and remotely say had anything to do with this movie being bad. I think it worked with what they had to work with. I like the dynamic between her and Rey, especially considering how much of a dick Luke was to Rey in The Last Jedi. It was kind of nice to, which I still stand beside, just saying, I still stand behind Luke from The Last Jedi.
Oh, same. And then Leia kind of just bonked him on the head and said,
basically.
Stop it.
Yeah. It was very in line with who Leia is. She's always been that one person that basically the rock everybody stands on through everything, whether, even in Rebels, when she was like 16, she was showing that strength then, and then, if you keep up on all the novels and stuff the way, some of us do, and you see Leia's journey through the entire saga from beginning to end, I think, it was very in line with her character. And I think they did a really great job doing what they could with her. The way she died, I get why they did it the way they did.
Yeah, it kind of felt flat for me.
But like you guys said, their hands were very tied.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
fine. I mean, I see a comment in here, and the meaning behind that scene is that she is. So if you want to bring up Betsy Side's comment here about how she wanted it, about how that moment stopped Kylo from killing Rey, and that brought Kylo Ren back, and that was and of course that propelled Kylo/Ben through the rest of the movie, and really gave him the only sense of meat he had in the movie. Is the final act of the movie.
Right.
So
the Leia death really hit home for me because of what they did with the other characters around it, like how much that it impacted, Ben in coming back and having that moment with his dad, where the whole conversation is literally about what your mother fought for is still alive, so therefore you can keep going. Up to when Chewie gets back and finds out that the last of his, the trio, the last of his friends had died, and Chewie just lost it. And Chewie is such a wonderful character in the Star Wars, who obviously doesn't talk, and that was something that really hit home for me. Every time I see that, I get weepy when I see Chewie just break down like this, the big strong Wookiee.
Yeah, he's the mighty Chewbacca, and then the death of Leia just takes him to his knees. Like, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah, but then I loved Lando being our last legacy character. Just a little bit after that, being our anchor in that moment and trying to pep talk Poe and whatnot as well, and the Resistance. Like, that really worked well for me too. So
we had each other.
Yep. So while the scene didn't really land for me as much as I wanted to, its impacts reverberated for the rest of the movie. That really brought me on board for the rest of it. So
moving on with Rey, let's talk about, I think we need to just talk about both of their journeys together, because the thing that they introduced in The Rise of Skywalker was the concept of the dyad. And that was something that I thought was a absolutely brilliant thing to do, because clearly they were trying to not dive full in with everything The Last Jedi set up, but this idea of a connection between the two of them that went beyond what was normal is something they did hold true with. And the dyad was just a brand new concept that they introduced to Star Wars that I think has a lot of fun ripple effects, both in what you can do in previous storytelling that they're going to do in the future, but also in this new Rey movie. It does open up some avenues for you to just potentially do some weird Force things there as well. And I also think it just added some emotional beats to the episode, not to mention what Palpatine found out at the end. So does the dyad work for you? Is it a prominent story beat for you that you're like, yes, I buy into this? Or was it just, okay, you're just trying to say something to throw, something at the wall and hope it sticks?
Do you want to start, Brian, or do you want me to? Because I have a big tangent on this that I want to get into. So
I think the idea of the Force
tangent.
I think the idea of the Force dyad is really cool. I think it was a really cool concept. I think it was something that I would have wanted to see, sooner in the trilogy than last movie, to just kind of be the catch-all to just explain everything. But I like the idea.
Can you explain that a little bit more, though? Because I would argue against that. I would just love to know a little bit more on like why you would have wanted that like sooner, or like how. I'm just a little confused.
I feel like that should have been at least touched on at some point in The Last Jedi, especially when.
Well, we got the setup of it,
right? But that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like maybe Yoda should have mentioned something to Luke about it. I mean, like. We know, Rey and Kylo were having those communications. Heck, they even touched, over over Force Skype or whatever. They physically touched and everything. So I think that's something that maybe Yoda should have brought to Luke's attention when Luke was getting ready to burn the tree. You know what I mean? Like, so, back then we'd have been like, wait, what's going on? There's actually is a connection between the two of them. That's kind of cool. And it's not the first time we've seen a connection like that before. I mean, even in some of the EU stuff, like with Bastila and Revan in Knights of the Old Republic, they had a Force bond kind of thing. And so it's not something that I think they just came up with on the seat of their pants. I think they just dusted it off a little later than they should have.
Go ahead, Nate. You're up. You got this.
Okay. Bear with me for a while, guys, here, because this is basically what I was talking about and what I've been alluding to, in that I wish they had thought about things a little bit more in their storytelling and whatnot, because the idea of the dyad is awesome. I think it's a really cool idea that was set up, and having it be revealed in the last movie, fine, whatever. But for me, over the last 4 years, my opinion on the dyad has bloomed into a wild retrospective vision of what the sequel trilogy is at its core. And I wanted to write an article for the site about this, but I haven't had the time. And it basically goes back to what the sequel trilogy is about. And it's ultimately about legacy. The idea of legacy. That's why a lot of people wanted Episode 9, the original title, to be Legacy of the Force. A lot of people like that. So that word legacy is really key to the Rise of Skywalker at its core. So pretend with me for a second that the sequel trilogy wasn't just you do this movie, you do that movie, you do that movie, and there was a one cohesive plan throughout. Pretend with me for a second that you're on that side, that everything makes sense, because some people legitimately think everything makes sense. I'm not one of them, but it is what it is. Because I can see both sides. So the dyad. So I always think back. Do you guys remember Freddie Prinze Jr.'s rant about the Force and all that stuff, and how the Force corrected Palpatine and Vader taking over and the Empire and whatnot, and how the Force corrected that and gave us Luke and Leia? I kind of conflate that to thinking about the sequel era, in that, so Palpatine obviously lost at the end of Return of the Jedi. And what he did was, he, in maintaining his essence and trying to come back and all this stuff that he did over the course of the 30 years after that, up until Rise of Skywalker, he basically did unholy things with the Force in order to resurrect himself and all this stuff. So basically the way I see the dyad at this point, and it's just me, I don't know if that's how the people at Lucasfilm see it, but I would have loved a whole exploration of the idea that Palpatine manipulated the Force, so the Force had to overcorrect and try to undo what he did, and that produced the dyad. For me, that's how I see it, and I love that idea. I don't know if that's where they went, but I think I think the dyad is the Force just trying to put things in balance, because balance is key in all this as well. I mean, the definition of balance is interesting in Star Wars, but I don't know. I like the idea of the dyad, but yeah, at the end of the day, I wish the sequel era just explain things a bit more, because I think there's so many cool ideas in there. I don't know. It's interesting.
Here's my thing. Why? A couple things, and I'll start with some of Nate's stuff. But why do we need this? Why do we have to have it explained? Because I think the movie, while it doesn't necessarily get into the weeds with it, it kind of gives its own explanation. Like, we are a dyad in the Force. We are a power unknown for generations.
I think,
and as an audience member, I'm like, okay, that's what the Force needs. They're going to come together because that's why they're connected. That's why they're going to end up being the duo that takes down what is the root of all evil, which is Palpatine and the dark side at this time. That's kind of where
I don't think it's a problem for the sequel trilogy, but because they build the Rise of Skywalker as the end to the Skywalker saga, so many people think of the sequel era as its own thing. They don't connect it at all to Return of the Jedi and all that stuff. And I think it goes back to them not really explaining properly why Palpatine is back, because if they explain why Palpatine is back, all of a sudden everything else just kind of falls into place. So,
but it's a fantasy it's a fantasy story, and to me, the more we explain in a fantasy story, the less fantastical it is, and it becomes more sci-fi Star Wars.
I agree. I prefer that's why I said at the beginning, my feelings for this movie are very complicated, because I don't want them to explain everything, but at the same time, so much of it feels just empty. It's just empty world building and just dialogue for the sake of dialogue, but you're not building anything. So, and that's what a lot of this movie does. And just as a final movie of a trilogy, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it's a really good end for the sequel trilogy. But for the entirety of the Skywalker saga, I think it lacks some of that galaxy building that could have made it an all-timer.
The only thing I would agree is that I feel like finding out how Kylo found out about the dyad would have been something that we could have seen, like in his thing, because he shows up and says Palpatine doesn't know this, but we're a dyad, but we don't know like where he got that information per se. Where I guess we're led to believe it's from when he has like probed her mind, like when they were connected, kind of thing, possibly. But I don't know. And then with Brian, I would honestly, and I say this as nicely as I can, I don't think it makes any sense at all for Yoda to tell Rey or tell Luke about the dyad, because in that moment, Yoda is not, I don't think, concerned with anything but getting Luke to understand that he failed to learn the one lesson he wanted to teach him, which was that failure is, the greatest teacher there is. And one thing we were trying to teach you was how we failed as the Jedi. We failed as leaders and mentors and protectors and guardians. And the one thing you are supposed to keep passing on is the fact that you are going to fail and that you failed. And I don't think Yoda, if he knew that the dyad, would have made...
Even if he knew, I don't think it would have been necessary, because
it would have taken away from the moment that scene was supposed to be.
So what about maybe and it doesn't necessarily have to be, but maybe, that moment where Luke walks in when he decides he's going with Rey, right? That's the whole point. He connected to the Force. He was going to go with Rey in Last Jedi. and he went to meet her. That's why when he walked in, he had a smile on his face. Hey, let's go. And when he saw Kylo sitting there, and he blew the hut up, right, with the Force, he said, "Leave this island now." And he turned around to walk away. When him and Rey were having their confrontation, I don't know. I just feel like at some point Luke should have known or been made aware or figured out that that's what it was, that they were able to have that kind of communication through the Force.
Well, he kind of alluded
intimately.
Well, he found out in The Last Jedi that they were communicating.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe there should have been something. Maybe it should have been Luke telling Yoda, hey, they're a Force dyad. I mean, Luke had the ancient text.
But then what do they do with the information then?
I'm also perfectly fine with the idea that we don't need to plan these things out as a cohesive
I completely agree with you about not having the dyad explained. I completely agree with you. Because look what happened when they tried to explain the Force.
Well, then I just mean as a greater thing. One of my nitpicks is when, and I think part of this is when we're saying we didn't have this cohesive story locked in, key from 7 to 9. But I mean, who does? George didn't have that planned from the get-go of episode 4. I mean, episodes 1, 2, and 3 changed quite a bit, as he was developing them, just based off of different things that were taking place. And I don't think it's any different with the sequel trilogy. There are aspects that JJ put into place that Rian Johnson chose to and do his own thing with, and I think that's perfectly fine as long as you interweave and connect everything. And I think it's just clear with episode 9 they failed to do that quite well. I really have no problem with any of the ways the dyad is told in this, outside of Kylo it's just kind of presented in this expository dump where he also says, you're a Palpatine, and that's supposed to be the big moment of the movie,
I am your father moment,
of the halfway point of that movie. And it's the only time in the movie where I kind of went, oh, really? Really?
Because and it's because of the actual language they used when they wrote that scene too. Because for the longest time, remember, even from when The Force Awakens came out, how did everybody say it online? Oh, she's a Palpatine, she's a Kenobi, she's a Skywalker. That's the language that the fan base used, and then for them to drop that exact same language into The Rise of Skywalker, it's just because even Daisy Ridley said they didn't have a plan about who she was going to end up being, and so because even the idea of Kenobi was getting thrown around at the time of Rise of Skywalker, it was just crazy. So they're sitting there looking at all these fan theories, going, "Well, which one?" I
haven't read what JJ said. I feel like he just kind of said, "I'm just going to throw a bunch of crap out there and let the next." Because I'm not coming back to do anything, so I'm going to let the next person kind of decide. And I felt like Rian Johnson said, "Okay, I'm going to have this thing where she's going to become the Jedi, and she's connected to all these people because she's going to kind of inherit the mantle, but she's not going to be really." And then we just went from there to reversal because it's okay, how do we now we have to enter her
button hooked
into the story? Because I don't think JJ I don't think he wanted to come in and do this, but he was.
Well, he shows.
Yeah,
it was always going to be Colin Trevorrow, and I don't know.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And then he got, and it's
we want to talk about his Duel of the Fate script a little bit.
No, we can. I love that script.
That's a whole other episode. Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
I don't really want to, because I think there are some very big problems with that script as well.
That's a whole other.
That is a whole other. I think it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting.
So to move on from the dyad, because I think let's get into before we get into the final 40 minutes of Ben's return. I think, and this is something we didn't really talk about these two characters a whole lot, because so much of the focus is on, our Force users, the Jedi, and all of that. Let's talk for just a moment. Let's go and give a little bit about Poe's arc in this movie as well, because I think it's pretty good. And then let's talk maybe a little bit about Finn and the concept of these, and Jaina, some of these other First Order troopers that also defected from the First Order, because I think that Finn and Poe were so interconnected in this movie, and the bromance is so strong that we kind of have to talk about one with the other. So Brian, go ahead and take it away. Finn and Poe, where do you stand on their characters? How do you think they were handled in this one? And then we'll go into kind of the final scenes of Rise of Skywalker, and then the infamous final line.
I think I'll start with Finn. I think Finn, it was actually a really good spot to start his character at the beginning of this movie. I think, honest to God, like, I feel like between 7 and 8, there was zero character development for Finn, which there shouldn't have been because it was over the course of 2 days and he spent half of it in a coma. So, I get it. But then between 8 and 9, where we left Finn off in 8, he had already faced down Phasma, who basically embodied his demons, right? Everything that he saw wrong with the First Order and what he was as a stormtrooper. And when he finally was able to battle her and take her out and watched her die, that was kind of him defeating his demons. And I think that got him to a point where he was very confident in who he was. I mean, he was willing to give his life for the Resistance later on at the Battle of Crate, and so I think that was a really good progression for him. And I liked seeing his confidence at the start of this movie, when he's in the gun turret on the Falcon and Poe's like, let's railroad these guys. And he's like, I was just thinking the same thing. He slides in, he's just confident, puts the headset on, and I liked what they did with him. I feel like the force sensitivity thing, I know people like it. I don't hate it. I don't feel like it was necessary. I feel like it was just kind of shoehorned in at the end. And I mean, I know it was hinted at throughout, but I mean, how long did they know each other? A year. And then it took that long for Finn to even start to say anything to Rey about it, and so it's like, I feel like it was just kind of shoehorned in for the sake of it being shoehorned in, because it didn't go anywhere. It didn't, it was just this dangling thread that's hanging out in the hyperspace now. So, but I like what they did with his character, with his confidence and him coming to terms with who he is and leading the assault at the end of the, movie on the Star Destroyer on the horse things. I don't remember what they're called, but I thought that was really cool. Poe, I feel like regressed a little bit in this movie. He learned this valuable lesson from Leia in 8, about, you don't always have to be a hero. You don't have to, it's okay to take a step back and win this way, and he learned, right. And he learned a very valuable lesson there. And then, for a year later, for him to, and I get he was under stressful conditions. I get it, because somehow Palpatine returned. I get it. But I feel like he just did this regression and to a point where, once Leia dies, and then he has this pep talk with Lando, like you guys talked about earlier. And then he's all gung ho, like, yeah, let's do it. Hey, Finn, you want to be my other general? Hey, let's do this. Let's do it together. We got this. We can do this. We're totally optimistic. We're totally confident. We're going to totally win this war. We can totally do this. Just to break down when it really mattered in the fight against the Final Order, to the point where he's just coming over the comms telling everybody, I'm sorry. I thought we had a shot. You guys are screwed. My bad. I get it. Lando came in clutch, but I feel like that was just so out of character for Poe after everything he had been through and the lessons that he had already learned and where he'd come from.
What about you, Nate?
I echo a lot of what Brian said, honestly. Finn, for me in this movie, I don't know. I liked what they did, but they didn't do enough. They didn't go all the way that the way they could have, to the point where if he's not in the Rey movie, it's going to really hurt his character in the long run, because so much was said.
He's going to be. He's going to be.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure he will be. But I don't know. Just his arc was unfinished to a point where it was really frustrating. You do this very interesting thing where he's confronting his past and he's having to fight once again for his future and with the Resistance against his former brothers and trying to save others who are feeling the same issues that he used to when he first left the First Order. So I don't know. And of course there's the whole dangling, is he force sensitive, is he not thing going on, which is a criminal thing to not pay off in some manner. I don't know.
You don't think it paid off?
How did they pay it off?
He knew that she was like alive, like he could feel her when
I
she
don't care
died.
about that. I don't care about that.
That's a perfect way of setting up that he is force sensitive, because if you start having force grab things, it takes away from the true meat and potatoes of the story, which is Rey and Ben. Like the story, they're doing their own thing. It's like the force battle here, and it does show this whole greater force thing at play with all the other First Order people having that feeling, and it hints at like, oh, the force is working in a lot of them.
I don't even know if I like Finn being force sensitive, to be honest.
He sensed Rey dying, but he couldn't sense her distress when she's having this vision of her sitting on the throne of the Sith. Like he couldn't sense that. Like it took her like killing Chewie, which we'll talk about here in a minute. I guarantee it. Before he came to talk to her about it, and then he still didn't even know what was going on. I don't know.
Have they been together that much? Like they weren't really together really
for a year at that point. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean like when he came back and she had that vision, like there was some time that had passed with.
I get what you're saying.
The vision, like she was reading the text whenever the Falcon got back, and someone just yelled at her, "Hey, Falcon got back!"
Right.
And so I don't know, like while they're doing their thing. I would push back on the Poe arc a little bit. I think it's really good because
I do too. Yeah.
When he had the despair of it's over, I felt like that was
he just saw his friends die right in front of him.
I felt like that was perfectly in line, given in The Last Jedi they had sent out the distress signal and no one answered them then, and now they're once again putting their hope in the others in the galaxy that will rise up, and they're out here and it's like, no one answered our call again. I've tried everything. And he's struggling. He's teetering on the edge of becoming that leader that everyone kind of looks up to him as, but he himself doesn't really feel that he is. And he's like, I failed. I can't do it. And he puts so much pressure on himself. And then that's when, Lando comes through, and that's just all. So I really like that scene.
If Poe comes back, and I don't know, I think he's the one character that is very iffy to ever come back.
If he gonna get offed quick.
He's the one character that his arc is also not finished, because jumping off of Tyler there, I don't think he truly embraced the idea of what being a leader is. So I think it'd be interesting to see him again really rise up to what Leia asked of him, because he tried his absolute damnedest, but at the end of the day, I don't know. So I think there's more to do with Poe as well. So I really hope that they can get all three for the future. But,
if he comes back, I think he's going to die fairly quickly as like
I think so too.
Emotional launch pad. So
he will be the third act death in the next movie. And
And I love for Finn, I love the idea that he found out that he wasn't alone, because he wasn't the only one that was struggling with this kind of confusion that he was having, because
I need to look something up here.
Because he's trying to talk to Rey about this, and obviously they never really get a chance to talk about it, that he's this feeling that he's been having, this force sensitivity, I guess is what we would say. And then he finds out that there are others like him in the First Order. He thought he was the only one, and there are battalions that are dropping their weapons and refusing to fight. And I think that's something that should have gotten expanded upon a little bit more. I would have loved to see a little bit more with him and Jaina and the Stormtroopers. This movie needed probably about 15 more minutes to breathe in a lot of areas. That's probably one of the areas that needed to breathe the most. But
can I just say real quick how annoying it was, the Jaina character and her interactions with Lando, because Lando's whole thing at the end of the movie was, oh, my daughter is missing. Very honorable. And the movie makes it seem like that Jaina is the daughter, that we find out it's not.
She is.
No, wait, no, she isn't.
Yeah, I think, where was it they ended up saying that?
It was like a rumor. I don't think that's like substantial.
Oh, okay. Was it? Oh, okay. I thought it was.
That's the problem.
I didn't think so, because
that's the problem.
I thought they confirmed it with the Shadow of the Sith novel.
Did they?
I thought they did.
No, because they never said like her name was Jaina or anything like that.
That was a totally different name. And so unless
His
that her
daughter's
name
name
Well,
was like
Finn's not his
Aisha.
real name either. That's the
True.
name that Poe gave him. He didn't
It's
know.
freak nasty.
Yeah, I don't know, but but at the
My
end of the day,
favorite meme
I really
ever.
hated their interactions because
It
the
was
idea
so
of them not
cringe.
being father and daughter,
Yeah.
based on my understanding,
Well,
of
let's
canon,
find out where you're from. Yeah, like
it's really odd.
oh,
What
geez.
have we here?
It's really odd.
Hello.
Anyways, back on track.
All right, so let's get into the final moments. Rey, Ben, come together. Rey has what I think is incredible, and anyone who disagrees is wrong. Moment where
Hey, Paul.
I told you I'm going to channel.
Bud. You're on
I told
island
you
here,
I'm
Brian.
channeling. I'm channeling my inner Paul on this one. No,
If Tyler says what I think, I am with him. I'm with him if I say so. If he says what I think he's going to say.
So I love when she passes the lightsaber to him, the Skywalker lightsaber to him. I love that scene, and then he gives the shrug. It goes off. All the Ben Solo stuff is incredible. Again, Adam Driver delivered so well with so little. And then we have them facing down Palpatine together. Rey finally communes with the Jedi of old, and some people. Anyone that tells me that is quote unquote fan service, which I saw so much, I hate the term a lot of times.
Such a bad term.
Because when you're dealing with a franchise that's 9 episodes in, you're going to have these callbacks and these things that happen, and that's not necessarily fan service.
Those callbacks.
To me, fan service would have been if they had all of the actual Force Ghosts in and around, and
Alec Guinness is standing there,
right? Instead, they just subtle, they had the voices come in, and my favorite line in the movie is just Kanan Jarrus saying, "The heart of a Jedi." The heart of a Jedi is in lies her strength.
I lost all my shit in the theater.
I can't. That gets me going.
None of my friends had watched Rebels, but I was just hooping and hollering. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, oh!
and then they, comes back the I'm all the Jedi, Palpatine, everything. I love the last 40 minutes of this movie. I think that the rest of the movie is a slog fest for me to get through. But when I get to when they are on Exegol together and the battle's going on overhead, it is I love it as much as I love anything else in the saga. And I know that is a controversial take. So Brian being the antithesis to this argument tonight, tell me why I'm wrong and it sucks.
Honestly, I wouldn't have minded seeing some Force Ghosts at the end of the movie when Rey, let her hear the voices and stuff, but when she's, using both sabers to block that lightning,
at least one.
I think it would have been cool. I think it would have. I
see
them actually physically there back her, because I don't think it would have taken anything away from her.
Luke.
It wouldn't have taken anything away from her, I don't think. Because they were all with her anyway. They were already all giving her their support from the ether anyway. It wasn't just her and the Skywalkers. Did Nate leave?
He got so mad at what you said.
Oh man. Oh well. And he was. I mean, they were already helping her as it was.
Messed around with computers. Oh, my camera.
It wasn't just the Skywalkers taking out Palpatine at that point. It was all of the Jedi fighting to take out Palpatine at that point. So I feel like it would have been, it might have been a little fan servicey, but I feel, people have made edits on YouTube with Force Ghosts, but like, had you put Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan in there and Yoda and, maybe not necessarily all, just the ones that make sense that would have a Force Ghost there, Luke, Anakin, even Leia, that would have been cool to see, that maybe Qui-Gon, maybe. Now, I'm not going to say yes on Qui-Gon, but maybe Qui-Gon, but nobody else, it would make sense to have Force Ghosts because of the training it would take for that to be a thing, right? There would be no Mace Windu. There wouldn't be any Aayla Secura, there wouldn't be any Luminara, but to see a few of them
I would have
been
upset if there were Force Ghosts.
It would have. From what we know about Force Ghosts, they only really appear to
when
those
you need
that
them the most,
and to those that have a connection with them. So your only real candidates are, Luke and possibly Anakin for Palpatine. That would have been very interesting.
That would have been,
But of course, at the time, that wouldn't have happened. If they would have remade Rise of Skywalker today, I bet your goddamn ass Hayden Christensen would have been.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I don't care.
They can still special edition it.
Like I've never cared about Force Ghost lore.
I never have either. But
so when I hear the argument, well, she didn't connect. I don't care about Force Ghost lore. I don't think there's such a thing as Force Ghost lore. I think it's just something that we have created in our own headcanon. And I think that the line of I am all the Jedi is not this like literal thing that we need to take into consideration. And it's this I am the embodiment of 1,000 generations of teachings that is culminating in this final moment to destroy or to get rid of this evil, this root of all evil that has existed for thousands of years. And it's not, and I think that if the Force Ghosts appear like all around her, it may be symbolic in the gesture of, they represent those Jedi that she is culminating. But I think simply just having the voices, like that's all of the affirmation we need, because all of the attention needs to be on her, because this is her moment. And she is the one that the Force itself even has like chosen to represent everything in that moment, whether for better or for worse, for some people, she is the one that has been chosen. And it's the perfect, especially because I think she's unrelated to anyone that is on the Jedi side, is what they set up. And then it works
hearing
either
all
way.
Those voices
and then
in of itself is nuts on its own merits. The fact that she heard all those voices to begin with is absolutely insane.
And it's an affirmation on her part that she's able to commune with all of those Jedi, that she is kind of this chosen one from the Force, that even these Jedi that she's never interacted with, that do not, as we know, haven't trained to become Force Ghosts. They're still she's able to commune with them in some way. They're with her in this moment. I just think if they start popping up everywhere, it becomes too much like in-game,
it was already
reverse
very end-game.
snap, everything, like where they just
it already was.
And
it already was such a ripoff of Endgame.
But how? The script was written before this stuff was filmed.
It was just coincidence to the movie.
It was literally, it was, I am all the Sith, and I am all the Jedi. I am inevitable. I am Iron Man. Boom, like that. And then you've got like all the portals opening up. You got all the portals opening up from Endgame. And when everybody shows up at the last minute, right when everybody's lost hope and they're getting ready to get their asses handed to them. Here comes the cavalry.
Like, Ryan, that is not how film production works. Oh my God. That's not how it works. Rise of Skywalker was shot and all this shit before Endgame ever came out.
Oh.
They might have done reshoots, but they already had.
Well, Endgame came out. No, Endgame came out well before.
Yes, but when they made the movies, Rise of Skywalker and Endgame, they were not sharing sets.
I didn't say they were, but it seems like
how the hell.
But both movies are made by the same company. And you're trying to tell me that they're both culminating this giant film saga, and then they just happen to have two of the biggest moments that are supposed to be crowd-pleasing moments that are almost verbatim identical.
They're putting out by the same company, Disney, but Lucasfilm is its own entity.
I understand that, but I still
I highly doubt that Bob Iger sat down Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy and said,
"Look,
you guys
Star Wars came out first.
Line.
I'll say this: had Star Wars come out before Endgame did, I'd be saying the same thing about Endgame. I'd be saying the exact same thing. Oh my God, it's a ripoff of that. It's literally it's like." Disney's two biggest tentpole movies that came out that year had exact same beats at the end of the final battle. I'm not a fan.
It didn't have the same beats.
It was like
those two beats were
not the same.
Iron Man is like
I am behind both.
Yes, 100%.
No. Captain America in Endgame is getting his ass handed to him. He knows he's getting ready to lose this fight, and he's going against this entire army on his own. Poe is the exact same way. He knows he's getting his ass handed to him. He knows he's getting ready to lose. And at the last moment, here comes everybody. Here comes everybody. And then it's just, oh man, to me, it was very, very similar.
Well,
and that's the first thing I thought of watching Rise of Skywalker.
Superhero movie that's ever been made.
And most action movies ever, and action adventure sci-fi movies ever. It's the same.
Yeah, but to have those two match up like that, I am inevitable. I'm Iron Man. I'm all the Sith.
But
I'm all the Jedi.
Like, have it was nothing just in common.
I know, but it's like, who at Disney was like, okay, we can just put the same thing out in both these movies that have nothing to do with each other. We can do that. Why not? Like, it's just
because they have nothing to do with each other.
But it's so cookie cutter. Like, it was such a cookie cutter thing. Like, so are they just going to do that at the end of like Snow White now? Like, oh, she's losing to the witch and she's just going to be like, it's just, I don't know. I just, as soon as those things happen, I was like, it's fucking Endgame. Like,
I doubt you sat in the theater on opening night or whatever.
I did actually.
I doubt that you were thinking Endgame.
I was.
Like,
I absolutely was.
I am all the. It's not even remotely close to I am Iron Man. Just in the whole sense of it, they have the two same like words.
The coincidences match. I get it, but
like
I'm sorry, but I do not believe that. I do not believe it was a Disney mandate for those things to match. I just refuse to believe that.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
There is no way it was a Disney thing, a Disney call for those two scenes to basically mirror.
I'm not saying that they went out of their way to make. I'm not saying that they went out of their way to make the match. I'm saying they are so uncreative enough they couldn't come up with anything other than that, and that's just what Disney both signed off on. Both of them, like, yeah, that's fine. That it works on this. Absolutely, we can do it on that one too. That sounds awesome for this. Let's do it for this too. Like, somebody had to greenlight that. Somebody high up had to greenlight that and be like, yeah, that's cool.
I don't think
like how did the writers of like how did J.J. Abrams feel going to see Endgame for the first time and then he sees these lines getting said and this thing happens?
I don't think JJ's a Marvel fan.
JJ's
he's obviously not a Star Wars fan.
Star Trek 4 movie.
I disagree with that, but
Nabel had a problem. Nabel blew up on what I said right before Brian went on his tangent.
I deflected for you, buddy. I got you. I'm running blocker over here.
Rise of Skywalker, better movie than Avengers Endgame. I said it.
It's not, but to each their own. Oh my god, where were we?
So to wrap us up here, well, not to wrap us up. Second to last thing. Ben Solo, uses their dyad connection to bring Rey back. When Rey, even though I know Rey comes back at the end of this movie, now that I rewatch it, I love Rey's character. She's probably my top 5 Star Wars characters in all things, books, comics, animated, whatever. So when she dies, it does affect me like every single time. But I still am really frustrated that they killed off Ben Solo's character in that movie. It felt too much like Return of the Jedi when, Vader dies. And I really wanted him to have to do the difficult thing, which is live with yourself for like the things that you have done. And I get the appeal of a Skywalker being able to actually, save someone that, he really cares about and defeat evil while also saving something and someone that he loves, but to also die in that and not continue to live on and continue to push through and deal with the consequences of your actions, I felt like was just it was not the best use of what they had to work with. So your thoughts before, and then we'll get into Rey Skywalker and everything at the end, but your thoughts real quick. We'll start with you, Nate, on the Ben Solo, sacrifice at the end. And the kiss.
The kiss I could give 2 shits about. I really don't care about the kiss. it is what it is. I really
Nate,
don't. I don't care. Who
Closet Raylo over there.
Probably. I just don't care.
I love it.
It's a goddamn. Yeah. Who cares? I don't know why it's in the movie, but who cares? I mean, it is what it is. But as far as Ben Solo goes, and his death. I don't mind it. It would have been way more interesting to have him survive and have to live with the things he did, because we haven't really seen that a whole lot in Star Wars.
Can you imagine him coming back with Rey when they land and he's there?
Oh, it'd be weird.
There?
That's what I'm saying. Like I would have preferred him to survive and see what happens there, because we've never. Star Wars has a bad habit of redeeming villains that don't need to be redeemed. The argument is still out there if Kylo Ren needed to be redeemed or not.
Whoa.
I don't know. I feel like that's a whole other topic which we're about to get into. But for this movie, yeah, I mean, to end the Skywalker saga, you need the Skywalkers to be in a good place. So Ben Solo being redeemed was your only option. It was your only option. The things he did in the prior two movies kind of say he probably shouldn't have been, but the only right way to end the story.
Why is that?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch, but as I'm watching, I just don't see him as a redeemable character. He just does things that I'm like, I don't know. You're just.
But Vader is.
I don't know.
Especially now that we've watched the prequel trilogy, he slaughtered children. He tortured his own daughter.
With context of all that, I don't know.
Even if A New Hope, he helped blow up an entire planet, tortured, this innocent person, knowingly just chopped off his son's hand, put Han in carbonite, wanted to kill all these people. I mean, and then he's redeemed because he loves his son. We accept that. Ben hurt. He killed his own father because.
Oh, I accept his redemption too. I accept it too on the same merits, but I don't know. I think it would have been more interesting to stick your ground on Rise of Skywalker and have him be the big bad. I think that would have been a way more interesting movie. And then to have the question of, can he be redeemed, even though he's the big bad of it all? But yeah, like the only possible end for the saga was to have his redemption. So I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it on the same merits of Darth Vader's redemption, because it's like it just makes sense to further the Skywalker name as well in that, and to give them a happy ending. So I don't know. Same thing with a lot of the movie for me. It is what it is, and you just gotta accept it if you're gonna come to terms with the movie. I don't know. I really don't have a lot of thoughts. I would like to see them find a way to bring him back, and I think there's a good chance they do. What that looks like, I don't know.
I don't think there's any way Adam Driver comes back anytime soon. He seems to be pretty good, and I love the fact that he's just doing all these weird roles right now. Like we saw him as
nothing's landing though.
But that's the thing. He doesn't have. I mean, he just likes doing this stuff, and he got his Star Wars check. He's definitely not hurting for money.
Daisy Ridley's hurting. She's coming back.
I love Daisy Ridley, but
work.
I love Daisy Ridley, and she is like, I like her character more than any other character. Adam Driver is in a class of his own, I think, in terms of just talent and being able to take on any role. So,
well, he's a much better actor than Daisy Ridley is at this point in their careers.
Brian, take it away, and then we will go into the little finale here for the last 10 minutes.
I'm glad he's dead. I'm glad they killed him. I'm glad he's not coming back. And the reason I say that is because Rise of Skywalker did something several times. Like, if you do it once in a movie, that's fine. I can forgive it. But they did it like 7 or 8 times in this movie. How many times did this movie kill somebody off just to have them come right back in the next scene? The whole movie was built around Palpatine coming back mysteriously, first off.
It's Palpatine.
And then you've got
Kylo.
And then you've got Kylo. When what? Yeah, when Rey stabbed him, you thought he was dead. Just kidding. He's alive. And then, you've got Chewie getting killed on the shuttle as it's getting taken off. Just kidding. He's back in another scene. We're going to delete 3PO's memory to find out what the Sith dagger said. Just kidding. R2 had a backup of 3PO on his Google Drive.
That had to happen. We can't have
let's see.
3PO
Ben got thrown down a pit. by Palpatine. We're like, oh crap, what happened to him? He comes back. He's
if
just
you
down
thought
there
Ben died,
taking
there,
a nap
stop.
or something. He's down there taking a nap or something and comes back after everything's said and done.
Isn't that Star
Rey
Wars?
dies.
Like, isn't
Rey
that
dies.
Star Wars?
Rey
Though?
literally dies
I think we have to
just to come right back.
Isn't that Star Wars?
I think you have to defend it a little bit, and
I don't
what
know.
you
Not
think,
that many times in one movie.
But how many of those did you actually think that the person was dead?
Chewie, I thought was actually
Chewie,
dead.
yes.
3PO, I thought his memory was completely
you
erased.
thought I was shocked, but I did not think they would kill
so.
Chewie off screen. Like, you think they would kill Chewie off
Why
screen?
not? I thought it would have been.
I don't know. Why'd they do a lot of the stuff they did in this
outside
movie?
of Chewie and 3PO, did you honestly, in the fiber of your bones, think that they killed anybody?
Later.
Oh yeah, then they blew up Kijimi, and you think Zori Bliss is on the planet. Just kidding, she's back in the final battle with Babu Frick. Like, no, I'm just like, how many times though does it need to happen?
Babu Frick died after I just met him, and it was the worst thing
I know,
ever.
but still, like, it's like, why are they? Every single time you're like, the stakes are supposed to be so high for this movie, and the only two people that died that we cared about were Ben and Leia.
So
like everybody else survived.
Why do they need to die? Why does anyone need to die?
Because I mean, the stakes were so high. Like you can't have everybody walk away completely unscathed.
So then, how
you
is
talked about the stakes in Return of the Jedi,
best trilogy capper of all time? Because no one died in there besides Darth Vader.
I don't know.
And that one guy that said, "I'm hit," and he fell into
right into the bridge of the Star Destroyer.
People died in Return of the Jedi, and we still hold that as the highest stakes ever. I still watch that
because that's Star Wars. Want this feeling of unbridled, piercing hope.
Oh no, I get it, but to me that was just a over and over and over, and it's like.
To a point, I agree.
I fully expected General Hux to just get up and walk off screen after getting shot. Like it was like I fully expected nobody else to die in this
pretty
movie.
badass.
The Chewie thing
it really would have been.
He's limping around.
Chewbacca thing I will grant you, because when they made the choice to make it seem like he died, they undid it way too quickly. They could have let that fester, and you just sit with the idea of Rey. She just killed one of her best friends.
Yeah.
That would have been a very interesting little 5-10 minute excursion, but instead, nope, it's like 45 seconds to 2 minutes.
Yeah, right off the bat. I don't know. It was one of my biggest problems with this movie. And it just, I don't know. You thought Finn was getting ready to die at the end of it. You thought he was going to sacrifice himself, which I thought would have been an awesome cap to his story. I really would have. With everything that he'd been through, and he was willing to give his life to fight for the resistance and to take down these Star Destroyers.
Happy endings at the end of the day. You need happy ends at the end of the day.
I just
let the different superhero stuff do their thing. I don't get the obsession that, and I think we're starting to come out of this now, where our favorite characters and these people need to have these like sad endings. To me, a Luke ending is like a perfect blend for everyone that wants kind of a happy ending at the end, but also a little bit of some bitterness along with it too, because he goes through this intense arc, and his death is meaningful, but it also is like, wow, like there's a lot of sadness that also comes with it because of choices that he made to put himself in that position. So let's close it out. Just a quick note, the score by John Williams from that point on to the end of the movie is absolutely fantastic. It is beautiful. The
soundtrack's kind of boring to listen to, honestly.
Right there, like the thing is like the Jedi.
In the context of the movie, and the context of Rise of Skywalker, it's an incredible score.
It is incredible. It is incredible, and I just want to say that real quick is perfect. And then the scene with them hugging right there and everything going around with the music was absolutely phenomenal. Then we go to Tatooine, and which I feel like we all knew was going to happen. We're going to close the Tatooine with the twin suns and the Force theme and everything.
Perfect.
And then we have she sees the twins, she sees Luke and Leia's Force Ghost, and then she claims herself to be, Rey Skywalker now. It's like this moment of like, I am choosing my own thing. Everyone has their own thoughts on this. I feel a certain type of way. I have a feeling that, some of us feel a different type of way. And then I have a feeling that another one of us, is pretty sure he feels a certain type of way, but isn't maybe quite as sure. So Nate, why don't you start maybe with that?
You know, I don't think you guys have been picking up a theme throughout the last hour and a half, but I haven't
seen the movie in 3 years.
I'm basically right down the middle. I really don't care. It's a freaking last name, but I think it goes back to, for me, I at the end of the day, I do like that she took on the Rey Skywalker name, and I do like the end of the character. And the reason for that is because I just love Rey's arc throughout all 3 movies. I think it's a beautiful arc. She starts off as this nobody. She realizes she has a bigger place. Then she's just thrown back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to wrap her head around believing she's a nobody, she's related, and then she's not, and then force and all this stuff. At the end of the day, she just embraces who she is. She embraces that she is a Jedi and the legacy behind that, and she just accepts, and the acceptance that she might not be perfect, but she just is who she is at the end of the day, and she just decides the people that love me the most are Luke and Leia, and I'm just a Skywalker. And whether or not that makes sense is a whole other debate, and as I'm sure Brian will get into in a second.
Love her the most, but also helped her turn into the person that she is the most. And they, developed. They were, in a sense, she felt like they were her adopted parents that she was looking for in many regards.
And part of Rey's arc is just this constant. People think that she didn't go through anything. I'm sorry, but the personal crisis that she went through the entire trilogy really hit me home. And even heading into Rise of Skywalker, thinking she's a nobody, and coming back on the road from accepting that, only to be told, no, you're not only nobody, you're worse than nobody. You're a freaking Palpatine. And that, to me, and the moment she discovered that as I'm watching it, really sunk her to even below her point in The Last Jedi. So for me, I like the Rey Palpatine thing for what it means for Rey. In terms of the larger saga, that's a whole other issue. But in terms of the Rey character, I do like what that represents for her, in that she gets to choose her own destiny. She gets to choose her future, and she just, at the end of the Rise of Skywalker, she embraces a positive future, a positive outlook for the first time in her life. And that means she just chooses the best light in her life, and that's the Skywalkers. So
I want to talk about this comment, and Manslayer's he's been in here like a trooper all night, but I want to say it is like a title.
Really talking a whole lot about your stuff, but
it is like a title, and it is like a moniker that's going to go forward. But in the same sense that Ahsoka is looked as kind of a Skywalker, in the sense, and that Anakin is like her big brother almost. In the same sense, I would argue that Rey, who was searching for parental figures her entire life, especially given what she went through in the Shadow of the Sith novel, to me it's perfectly reasonable that when she is looking over there and she sees them, like a lot of people, I would say, who maybe have struggled with parental figures in their life, maybe they haven't had them, or just in general have these role models they look up to, they take on a parental role in a sense. So for her to look at them as parental figures in her life makes perfect sense to me. Like that doesn't mean it's like, mom and dad are over there, but they do have like these.
It's found family. I mean, it's an adoption.
It's found family, and so I think that's the beautiful
all the time, and them embracing new last names and new identities and all these things. So
to me, that's just perfect, absolutely perfect for Brian. Take it away.
I don't know. I would have rather her just, instead of Rey, who I think it would have been, for me, I think it would have been a better message if she had just Rey and just went by only Rey.
That would have been better, I think. I don't know.
I feel like
it's interesting.
In Last Jedi, when Kylo tells her, your parents are nobody. They're in a pauper's grave on Jakku. I mean, at the time, that's all we knew, right? We were like, is he telling her the truth? Is he lying to her?
We got to remember who's telling her that. It's Kylo Ren who doesn't really know.
We were questioning it. Is that true? Is that not true?
And then Kylo found out more information from Palpatine. So
if she is just Rey, I agree. If she hadn't been told if she didn't find out she was a Palpatine in the movie, then I would agree with you. But with Palpatine being there, I think her taking on the name, it's more powerful versus like. She's flipping the script on us.
I don't know though, because
she's choosing a different route for the galaxy with that choice.
But the thing is, like,
everything that happened to her, and she's choosing.
But Leia, one of the biggest things Leia drove home with her, the last thing Leia said to her before she left to go on this mission, it was the final word she ever said to her was, Rey, never be afraid of who you are. Don't be afraid of who you are. And what does she do? She's afraid of who she is. She's afraid to take on the name Palpatine. She's afraid to be a nobody.
But she did take on the name Palpatine. The entire last act, she fought Palpatine and she accepted that I need to dispel all this evil in my life. When Leia told her that, she's thinking she's a nobody. So have everything flipped on its head. I don't know. It's
because she talks. She was terrified of what she was capable of. Yes, but in the fight with Palpatine, she specifically says that my parents were strong. Like they protected me from you, and she's proud of who she comes from, and she's acknowledging that she has been afraid of what she's capable of because of Palpatine. But she also acknowledges she does come from something good. But in the end, when it's time for her to forge her own future, she's saying, who has had the greatest impact on like who I am today? And I go back to The Force Awakens. She looks for Han, and then she's on this at the end. It's like, I need to find Luke. And they send her to find Luke. And Kylo says it to her, you've been looking for, these father first in Han Solo, now in Luke Skywalker. And she did find that family that she was searching for, that she lost when she was just a little kid, and now she finds it. And even bigger than that, I think she understands the importance of the Skywalker name living on, like in the galaxy, because of what the name Skywalker represents as well.
But I don't know though, because even the name Skywalker is kind of tainted at this point. Once everybody finds out, that Luke and Leia are the children of Darth Vader in the Bloodline novels, but nobody knew until Bloodline. And once it hit in Bloodline, it was
so by the time of the sequel trilogy, everyone knows. I don't know.
By the sequel trilogy, everybody knows that the Skywalkers were related to Vader, absolutely. And so why take on the Skywalker name too? Everybody knows Anakin Skywalker turned into Darth Vader. It ends up being galaxy-wide news in Bloodline.
So, I wasn't saying mom and dad. I was saying like parental, like they were like these parental figures in her life, like adopted parental.
I don't even see it as a parental figure thing. I just see it as she's just choosing to lead a different life than what she could have.
Right.
And I think it's parental in the sense of they're her mentors, they're her role models. They took on this parental role in her life,
or even a teacher-student type thing or something like that. Like I just see it as Rey taking on that name as, hey, this is the galaxy I'm going to live in now, where I can be who I want and not have to think about where I came from. Everything that happened to me in my life doesn't matter. I am going to be who I am. Going back to what Leia said to her, don't be afraid of who you are. Who she is someone who loves, who embodies good. And what is all that? The Skywalkers.
Yeah, say that to Anakin in episode 3.
Yes.
No, I mean,
she sees Luke and Leia.
Well,
but I think the whole message,
I would say that to Anakin, because if he would have heard that, he probably would have said, this Sidious guy is kind of twisting my mind, and I want to love my wife, who's going to bear my children. So Anakin was still acting out of love in Revenge of the Sith.
I'm sure the galaxy saw it that way. I'm sure the rest of the galaxy saw what he did to the youngling.
I would push back a little bit, and we can talk about Revenge of the Sith here in a few weeks. I would push back a little bit. I think it was partially out of love, but also Anakin's selfish desire for power was.
I agree too. Like, I'm not saying what he did was good by any means at all.
We're gonna close tonight with Nate defending Darth Vader as a loving figure,
as a child murderer.
The murders at the temple were justified. They were okay.
It came from a good place.
Nate was a clone trooper in the 501st behind, like saluting him on the way out. Like, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In my defense,
Nate was tossing the Jedi over the side of the temple.
If you have watched the show,
we did good work tonight.
If you've watched the show, you know I talk out of my ass most of the time. I don't form thoughts. They just come out of my mouth, and most of them do not make sense. I'm a much better writer for the site, and not.
Nate watches Revenge of the Sith, and he's like stuffing his face full of popcorn. He's like, that youngling totally fucking deserved it.
Revenge of the Sith is actually probably lower tier on my Star Wars ranking. He's
watching Revenge of the Sith, and everyone's getting quiet. He's like, yes, this is the good part. And he's like, he was in the theater, and everyone's just silent. And Nate's
drop him in half again.
He did the Ben Solo. He did the Kylo Ren. More. Okay, so that was the perfect way to end this episode.
You know why Anakin killed that youngling, right? Because he called him Master Skywalker, and he hadn't got the rank of Master just yet. That's what it was.
Nate's at work when people don't address him by the right title. He ignites the lightsaber.
You guys are the worst.
Oh man!
I've never.
For those of you still hopping on, please like and subscribe here at Star Wars Unit Live. We have a lot of fun every Thursday night. We're gonna be back next week. I guess as the three of us are here, we can decide: are we going to go original or prequel trilogy next week?
Well, next week is Thanksgiving, so we're gonna have a show on Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, okay. We'll take next week off because of things. I forgot next week was.
I won't be in town, so you guys can decide. You guys can do whatever the hell you want next week. I don't care. I won't be in town, so if you want to have a show, be my guest.
We'll say next show. Do we want to go prequel or do we want to go original? Like where we want to take this?
Those in the chat. Where should we take it? Original or prequel trilogy?
I'm just. I can go either way. I know, like Phantom Menace is near and dear.
If we do the originals, we probably won't argue as much for the next 3 shows.
That's probably true.
That's probably I think in terms of flow, I think it probably makes more sense to start with the prequels and just work our way all the way.
Yeah, it's all uphill from there. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right. Yeah. Now this is pod racing. Let's go. And so I preface this with. I do not think that The Phantom Menace is a top 3 best Star Wars film, but it is in my top 3 favorites.
It ain't bottom 3 either. Yeah, no.
It is.
Right, we have some prequels in the chat. We're going prequels next.
We'll save the OT. All right, so we'll go prequels. Please like and subscribe. We love having you guys on here every single week. It's a good time always. Brian, where can we find you? Please plug your stuff, sir.
I know I've been absent from Newsnet for a little while. I've been dealing with some sickness and crap, so coming out of it now. So hopefully we can get a weekly roundup video out this weekend. That'd be kind of nice to kind of get going on that again. So you guys can find me right here on the Star Wars Newsnet, arguing and telling everybody that Rise of Skywalker sucks and that Luke was right. And Last Jedi.
It's actually all we talk about every week.
It's all we talk about.
It really is. Like, what the hell?
So you guys can also, if you guys want more of that, you guys can find me on my show, the Star Wars Canon Podcast. And we answer some mailbags each week. We haven't done an episode in the same amount of time that I haven't been on here because I've just been sick and crap. So we're going to be coming back with that with my co-host, Yusuf Wally from across the pond. He's out of Cairo, Egypt. It's always a good time talking to him about Star Wars. So catch us next weekend on Saturday, and we'll be talking some Star Wars, man.
Brian, you got anything, or Nate, you got anything cooking on?
I just went.
Me, not so much. The High Republic.
Oh, Nate had some younglings to kill. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm already plotting how to kill Nubs from Young Jedi Adventures. My baby. I'm gonna sacrifice my baby.
God, Nubs.
And I love Nubs. I'm sorry, he's gotta die. But yeah. You can find me on Twitter, Nate _Manningham, where I tweet a lot of Star Wars when I can, but also sports and other stuff as well. But on the site, Star Wars Newsnet, always find all your news there. You can mostly find me writing about books and comic stuff. The High Republic is back, but I am also always big on the other side of the publishing thing. So, and Dark Droids is heating up. If you're reading that in the comics land, it's going to pick up to its climax. So stick around, get all that good stuff over on the site.
Thank you both for joining us. We went really long this evening, but I thought we had some good debates, some good stuff as always. And, let's just leave it like right here. Like, this is always us at the end. We may be through battle. We may be bloodied and scarred at the end.
Nothing is as bad as Twitter after a new Star Wars movie. Twitter, and even not like it
or any movie.
We are survivors of the great sequel trilogy Twitter wars.
This is true.
That are still going on. Unfortunately,
they're still going on. You can follow me at TypeRep5 on Twitter. I can't call it X. I just can't. It's just Twitter. I'm sorry. It's just that. My students found me online this week. They finally decided to start stalking their teacher before Thanksgiving break. So that was just
you
fabulous.
Gotta make everything private, man. You can't be dealing with this.
But then, it's like I want to be able to interact with people online, and if I'm private, it's like I'm not following every single
they found your Twitter
on the internet. One of these days, one of those little kids is gonna pop in this chat and be like, "Mr. Bradshaw, I found you," and then be like, "Yep, blocked." Like
it's better than an OnlyFans.
I'm just dropping F-bombs all over the place.
Oh my god!
It's better than an OnlyFans, Tyler.
Yeah.
Crap will get you fired.
I need him for High Republic stuff. I don't want to read all the books myself.
All right. Appreciate all of y'all. We'll see everyone. Probably not next week because it's Thanksgiving. We'll take the week off, but in 2 weeks,
probably not.
We'll be back. You never know. I might just start this random live chat of eating Thanksgiving food.
We'll just get drunk at Thanksgiving dinner, and then we'll just sign on here and just see what happens.
Oh man, that could be fun with all our families. That could be actually kind of fun.
It could get disastrous.
I'll have my aunts and my mother who are giant Star Wars fans, and all my aunts and uncles and cousins. That could be actually kind of fun. We'll have to talk about that. It won't happen. It will not happen. I guarantee you that. But
until next time, for light and life, may the force be with you, and may all the younglings be safe from Nate's terror.
Nubs.